Good morning. I just heard somebody's diaphragmatic breathing kick in. I heard that, that means that we're doing the good work for our nervous systems. So now is a time when anyone of any age is welcome to come and join me up front so that you can get a better look. And I hope that you do, because I have a couple of questions today. Sometimes I have questions. Actually, that's not really a surprise, is it? If we're Unitarian Universalists, we should always have questions. But I don't always ask them during the Words for All Ages. Good morning, y'all. I think we moved the chairs back. I feel like there's all this spaciousness up here. So today in our service, we're leaning into our value of interdependence. Can anybody give me a working understanding of what interdependence means to UUs? What is that? Interdependence. Doesn't have to be a kid either. If you're new here, it doesn't have to be a kid. Nobody wants to. Crow. Depending on each other and not just doing things yourself. The idea that we can do it all ourselves is kind of an illusion, my friends.
Being a community, that's the word I was looking for.
Being a community, yeah, indeed. We kind of are one, whether we want to be or not. We're kind of stuck with each other in point of fact. So we can either lean into that or we can, still try to do it alone, which is no fun. So that's interesting. All right, so I have another question. How many people here have either taken any level of OWL or been someone who taught OWL or was on a panel in OWL, maybe even today in point of fact? Okay, cool. So a lot of people. So one of the things that we talk about in OWL, right, is that if someone tries to get you to keep a secret from someone, maybe you're safe adults, like your parents or guardians, that's not cool. Because there's really not a good reason that anyone should ever be trying to divide us from our interdependent support network, right? That is not a thing that they should do. So that is one thing. But there's another way that community can sometimes look, which is that when someone's safety is involved, our community, whether that's our family, our church, our neighborhood, we might choose not to share all the information that we know. And that is something different, okay? So I want to share a story with you about that today, and it's called The Whispering Town, and it's by Jennifer Elfgren. So let's see what we have right here. Spoiler alert, I already know what we have right here. The remote control got turned off, you guys. There are new friends in the cellar, Annette, Mama said when I woke up. Time to take breakfast down to them. I paused at the top of the stairs. The cellar scared me because it was dark, but the whispering voices gave me courage. When I reached the bottom, I entered the secret room where we hid Danish Jews from the Nazis. A woman and her son sat on a cot. I'm Annette, I said, holding out the basket. Mama made you breakfast. I'm Carl. The boy took the basket and handed his mother a roll and a soft-boiled egg. We thank you, she said. Back upstairs, I sat down to my own breakfast. How long will our new friends stay? I asked. 2 nights, said Papa. On the 3rd night, a boat will take them to Sweden. While they're here, we'll need more bread, Mama said. After breakfast, I walked to the bakery. We have new friends, I whispered to the baker. Here is extra, he whispered back, handing me a bulging bag. Stay safe. On the way home, I saw Nazi soldiers knock on a door across the street. Even though they had been in my town for a long time, my stomach still knotted when I saw them. Mama, Papa, soldiers across the street, I said when I came home. Mama tapped 3 times on the cellar door, tap, 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 to warn our friends to be quiet. After the soldiers left, Papa looked at the cloudy sky. No moon tonight, he said. It will be difficult for our friends to find the harbor in the darkness. The next day, I took food to the cellar again. Again, I let the whispering voices guide me down the stairs. This will help the time pass, I said, handing Carl some library books. He took them and smiled. I love to read. Mama, I need new books, I said when I came upstairs. So after breakfast, I walked to the library. We have new friends, I whispered to the librarian. Be careful, she whispered back, handing me extra books. On the way home, I saw Nazi soldiers knocking on our neighbor's door. Mama, Papa, soldiers next door, I said when I came in the house. Mama tapped 3 times on the cellar door. After the soldiers left, Papa looked up at the cloudy sky. No moon again tonight, he said. Maybe the clouds will clear tomorrow. Again, the next morning, I let the whispering voices guide me down the dark stairs. As Carl reached into the breakfast basket, a heart-shaped stone fell to the floor. Carl picked it up. I found this with my papa the last time we walked on the beach, he said. It's beautiful, I said. Annette, we need more eggs, Papa said when we finished breakfast. So I walked to the farm. We have new friends, I whispered to the farmer. Wish them well, he whispered back, giving me extra eggs. On my way home, I saw Nazi soldiers heading for our house. I cut across the alley and raced through our back door. Mama, Papa, the soldiers are coming to our house. They didn't answer me. No one was home. I tapped 3 times on the cellar door. Then I heard pounding on the front door. Boom, boom, boom. I opened it a crack. We've heard rumors that someone is hiding Jews on this street, said a soldier, pushing the door open. I haven't heard any rumors, I said, trying to stop my voice from shaking. When we find them, we will arrest everyone, warned the other soldier. Trembling, I closed the door. The soldiers were here, I said, when Mama and Papa returned. They are looking for hidden Jews. Brave Annette, Papa hugged me. Our friends must leave tonight even though it is cloudy. How can we get them safely to the harbor? I thought about being afraid of the dark cellar and how the whispering voices guided me down the stairs. Papa, what if people stood in their doorways and used their voices to guide our friends to the boat? I suggested. Papa stood quietly considering my idea. That might work, he said. Help me to arrange it. I ran to the baker, the librarian, and the farmer to tell them about our plan. They agreed to help spread the word around the village. At midnight, Carl and his mama came up from the cellar. Carl pressed the heart-shaped stone into my hand. Remember me always, Annette. I held the little heart against my own. After Carl and his mama slipped into the night, I leaned as far as I could out my bedroom window. I heard our neighbor whisper from his doorway. This way, he said, guiding Carl and his mother toward the harbor. Then our neighbor's neighbor whispered, this way. The whispers continued from neighbor to neighbor until Carl and his mama had safely reached the boat. I squeezed the stone in my hand and imagined them walking free on the beach in Sweden. So, sometimes when we talk about good trouble, this is what we mean. We mean being helpers as a community, and we mean not telling everything we know if it's going to harm someone's safety. So these are good things for kids to think about, because sometimes we get really excited to know stuff, right? Sometimes people tell us stuff and we're like, oh my gosh, I finally know something cool. I finally know something interesting, and we really want to share it, right? But yeah, this is one kind of good trouble that we can get into as part of the interdependent web. So that's something to think about as we sing our way out to our religious exploration groups. And surprise, I'm not going with you this week. I'm staying in here. So I will see you at coffee hour. And you may go.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace. May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice
We are all connected. In the story we just heard, a whole Danish village came together to save their Jewish neighbors. When it was too dangerous to use lights or speak loudly, they whispered directions from doorway to doorway, guiding refugees through the dark to boats that would carry them to safety. The whole town became one interdependent web of resistance. We Unitarian Universalists have known about interdependence for a long time. In 1985, we added the seventh principle to the six that we already had: respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. That principle served us for nearly 40 years. And in 2024, when we adopted our new values, we pushed interdependence even deeper. We named interdependence as one of our core values, and we made a covenant that says we covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality, and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. But while we often think about our interdependence globally, our relationship to the planet, to other species, to ecosystems, Sarah and I have been spending a lot of time thinking about what interdependence means at this particular moment in time, in this country, in this congregation, right now. Because what's happening in Minnesota and elsewhere and across the country is showing us that interdependence isn't just about our relationship to the planet, it's also about our relationship to each other, to our neighbors, to the people on our street who we may not even know. All y'all were so supportive of Sarah and I when we answered the call for faith leaders to come to Minneapolis last month. And while we had one conversation about our experience 10 days ago, I don't know how it's been 10 days already, we've been continuing to talk about it, mull it over, and try and figure out ways that we could share our experience with you. So we're going to have a conversation today about what we've learned, what we're seeing, and what it means for us here in Indianapolis generally and specifically here at UUI. Not only what we've learned about Minnesota and the resistance there, but how this all ties together with interdependence. So, Sarah.
Yes?
This is kind of fun.
I know, right?
What does it actually mean to know your neighbors?
So this is one of the things that I think some of us kept hearing in Minneapolis and being like, right, but what does it really mean? Right, but what does it really mean? Because one of the things that they kept saying to us over and over again is we feel more connected on a hyperlocal level than we actually are, right? We've got the internet at our disposal, and so we're able to tap into global happenings on a minute-to-minute level in a way that we never really could before. But we often don't know many or even most of the people on our street, or like we kind of know who we think is cool to chat with and who we don't think is cool to chat with, and that's like as far as that goes, right? And like we chat on the corner, but we don't really do anything together. And they kept saying to us repeatedly, have a potluck, a pitch-in. They said potluck, and I kept being like, ooh, we don't say potluck. But anyway, at your house, and invite everybody on both sides of your street on your block. And they said, it's not a political potluck, right? Like, this is not the point. The point is to know each other. Because what they found was there were already people on their street that they knew were aligned with them as far as what it means to protect one's neighbors. But there were also still people who had the relatively held belief, right, that like law enforcement is always there to help, for example, and then had to watch in real time as that turned out to not be true. And if you don't know each other, first of all, the people most affected are not going to trust you enough to tell you what their needs are, right? So that's one big problem. But also that becomes a barrier to entry for someone who's standing there on your street and going, this is terrible. This is not what I thought was going to happen. They're not going to know how to network in with the people who are already preparing. So they said, just literally have potlucks, go for walks in the park as a group, like do whatever works on your block, but block by block, you need to be getting to know each other now.
And part of the reason they said this too, right, is because when we know each other, interdependence stop being something academic, but it becomes something more personal. We become aware of each other and our needs in an immediate way. And I'm thinking about the story we just heard. If they didn't know their neighbors couldn't have been part of the Whisper Network.
Right.
Right.
Right. And whisper networks are a new concept to a lot of Unitarian Universalist people, right? But they have always existed among communities on the margins because people have had to know in real time who they're safe with and who they're not, right? And so whisper networks occur in workplaces, they occur in neighborhoods, they, all over the place. It's just if you have relative positional privilege, you're not aware of them. Yeah. So yeah, and it's fractal. If you're mobilizing block by block, then your collective power grows really quickly.
Well, and they talked, we have this in our notes elsewhere, but I think this fits now. They talked a lot about murmurations, like a murmuration of starlings?
Yeah, of starlings.
Okay, so
sorry, I'm a bird nerd,
I'm
like.
Nerd. So the way I know you've seen them, it's when a group of birds, like you see it like flying around and like it moves like it's. Fish do this in.
Yeah, that's true.
In
schools.
Thank you. Fish do this in schools too, right? Like you see them moving around, and it's like, how do they know what they're doing, and how does one part go off this way and one part goes off that way? But they're sticking together, and this is what's happening in the Twin Cities area because they are so well connected to one another. So I may be in multiple different text chat groups on Signal, which is an encrypted messaging app. So I may be in multiple of them. So when something comes up, I can immediately let my other groups know as well. And so they can respond. And so you get this amazing murmuration of people that are able to respond because they know each other and because they're connected to each other in real ways, not just in the ways that we are globally connected.
Yeah, and that system, they have systematized communications and action across like smaller areas, but those systems are not homogenous across the city, and that's a strength, right? Because everybody is having to adapt in real time. And if what's working on your block suddenly stops working because you realize, for example, that you have ICE agents in your chat, which has happened to people. They said, once it gets to a certain size, we have to assume there are ICE agents in our chat because people will show up in street clothes and talk with you after someone's been detained on your street, and you believe that they're a neighbor, and they're not, right? When you have to adapt and start doing something differently, if it works for your group, it may ripple out just like a starling murmuration across the wider community. But there's power in it not being the same.
Well, and that kind of connects to sort of the next thing we wanted to talk about is why what's happening in Minneapolis isn't necessarily going to be what it looks like in other places in the country. I mean, it's not going to look the same here in Indianapolis when we respond. It doesn't look the same in Maine the way they're responding. And part of that is because this is work that Minneapolis has been doing since George Floyd's murder. The infrastructure was already there. They have a calendar, phone numbers. They have twice daily gatherings where neighbors can get together at the People's Way, which is an old gas station. And so the neighbors are getting together. They're laying eyes on each other twice a day in these neighborhoods. And that's very different because they already had that framework in place, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not abstract.
Right, it's not abstract. Marcia Howard, one of the activists we met there, said you cannot fight for anyone unless you can see who you're fighting for. It can't be theoretical.
Yeah.
Right. And this is really what the interdependent web looks like in practice, not abstract, but as concrete protection, as neighbors protecting neighbors.
And you can really see what that's looking like in our local communities right now, because how many people here are Irvington residents? A couple of us, right? And so maybe you saw this week in our neighborhood group that we did have ICE in one of our most popular little restaurant and shopping plazas, but it was very difficult for the neighborhood to wrap their head around because there was, first there was a report of ICE activity, and then someone went out there and took a photograph, but the photograph they took was of two local sheriffs who just eat lunch there all the time and were leaving. And then the community started saying, well, ICE must not really be here. You were mistaken. It was the sheriffs. And people said, no, we just didn't take pictures because we were busy locking the back doors of all the restaurants and shops so that people couldn't come in. And then there was infighting about the fact that one of the businesses has owners who are Trumpy, right? So like all of those things greatly drew down our ability to respond as a community in an effective way to an actual presence in our neighborhood, right? And I didn't see anybody say, what about the Latinx grocery store 2 blocks from here? Has anyone checked down there, right? So like we're gonna have to figure out as a community how to do things in a sensible way when there actually is risk.
Well, and I think we even see that in Minnesota because what's happening in the suburbs is different than what's happening in South Minneapolis.
Yes.
There are usually just 1 or 2 people who are driving around trying to be constitutional observers and observing what's going on and recording that. Key words for you to look up. There's a difference between legal observers and constitutional observers. This is something that I learned recently, and it's constitutional observers that people are getting trained in for what's happening now. But there it's not so much of a large murmuration of like a whole bunch of people moving from place to place. It's 2 or 3 people who are kind of following it around, letting the community know so that people can then take action accordingly.
Yeah, and that is something that we need to think about in this community is the safety of those of us who are being diligent and watching, right? Because we saw and heard directly of situations in the Twin Cities while we were there where someone starts doing something illegal and people's doors start opening and they come outside and they blow those whistles. And I tell you, ICE has got to be hearing those whistles in their sleep. Because it's just, it's like sunshine laws happening in real time with whistles, right? Nobody is going to be able to get away with doing anything without being seen. In a suburban context where we're dependent on our cars, that becomes a bigger issue. And even in the city, people are saying, don't travel alone. Don't be driving around in your car alone. You need a second person with you. So we need to be thoughtful about that rugged individualism. I mean, if there's an exigent situation where we have to go run around by ourselves, I get it, but that should not be goals ever. Like we should have somebody with us for safety and security. I will also say one of the numbers that just blew me away was they had statewide something like 8,000 people trained as constitutional observers in November. That number is over 300,000 now statewide. It encompasses all, like out of 77 counties in the state, I want to say 73. So that tells you that however much, because we see the optics of wanting to paint this as a riot, wanting to paint it as illegal behavior, wanting to paint it as focused on city environments. It's not, right? And that tells you that the injustice is visible on a broad level.
Well, and that actually leads to sort of the next question we wanted to talk about, which is what does resistance actually mean in this context? And one of the things that we learned that I think really hit home for both of us is that we have got to stop arguing over the smaller stuff right now so that we have the privilege to argue about it later.
Yeah.
Right? If we want to be able to maintain the privilege of arguing over reproductive justice or climate justice, then we have got to partner with folks that we may disagree on some of these other issues for so that we can maintain this as contested space. So that's a big deal. I mean, that's really different than, I think, a lot of us kind of how we've done things in the past.
It is. And it reminds me of there's a phenomenon going on TikTok the past couple of weeks, if you haven't seen, that people will put up posts, and maybe normally they do knitting content. This is not a self-owned, but and they'll say, just a reminder that knitting is political because no one can produce knitting content if ICE shoots them in the face. Right? And people are saying this across platforms because they're making that point, right? And I think that that's true with things like climate justice and reproductive justice too. We know that this is a manufactured crisis. We know that the federal government freaked people out about migrants, overstated the number of people who were here illegally, overstated the number of people who are here committing crimes. It's a manufactured crisis that is a distraction from much more important things like climate change. Right? But that just means that it needs to get shut down hard and shut down as quickly as we can. And that requires cooperation.
It requires cooperation, but it also requires choosing how we want to respond. And what that might look like is not being pre-compliant. It might look like if you are someone who, if you were filming something on your phone and a law officer said, you can't film, and like intimidated you, and you were the type of person who normally would be like, oh, okay, right? I'll stop filming. Maybe you don't, right? It means training our nervous system on little things. So that we can do some of the higher risk things.
That's a big one. How many people here are generally law abiding? Just generally, right? Yeah. And I mean, I'm not talking about tabletop gaming, right? Because obviously in tabletop gaming, we get to unleash our inner selves and
or driving.
Yeah,
speeding.
But one of the things that people have pointed out in activism spaces is if we don't learn to transgress in small ways now, we're not going to just suddenly learn it in big, burst at the moment of crisis, right? Like how many people here have been in a confrontation and then got home and been making dinner, or they've been in the shower and they're like, well, now I know exactly what I would say, right? And like that's really what we're dealing with here is you've got to train yourself to be able to do it in the moment, or you're not going to be ready.
Well, and kind of connected to that is this fallacy of if you just follow the rules, you'll be fine.
How many people have seen that on a Facebook comment or a TikTok comment or this week? Yeah.
Right.
Like it's
if you just obeyed.
Yeah. If you just comply. And I finally saw someone say, it's really not the hallmark of a free society to say if you just comply, you won't be harmed. And I was like, thank you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, but that is what has moved so many people into this resistance space in Minnesota that I don't think would have otherwise been there.
Exactly.
So they see the proof.
Right. So what they're doing is they are forming connections and networks with people who might not necessarily otherwise be people that they think of as allies. Right? Because it's becoming so egregious that even people that we wouldn't necessarily normally partner with, we're finding partnerships, ways of connecting with them. Even the people who are saying, if you just obeyed the rules, you'd be fine. Even those folks are starting to be like, whoa, what the heck? Like there is no time where being shot and killed is justice for saying no to police officers, even if you're guilty.
Well, and it's something, and I don't know what the numbers are now, but I'm assuming that after Alex Preddy's murder, the number is higher. But it was something like 4% of the population of the Twin Cities participating in active resistance in some way, and that can look a lot of different ways, right? Like I saw a national story finally break yesterday or the day before, and I went, oh, I know exactly who they're talking about because we were at a panel discussion on Saturday. I was while you were out at the vigil site, and someone came in and said, I'm so sorry I'm late for the panel. I had to drop off breast milk to a family whose 3-month-old needs to be fed because their mother got detained, right? And so like that is what activism is looking like for some people in Minneapolis right now, is providing breast milk, right? Like it doesn't look just one way, and everybody doesn't know everybody, right? Like once you're networked in, you'll get a signal chat. Like a dear friend of mine got an urgent signal alert on Saturday morning, maybe a couple hours after I had left town, and threw on her coat and her boots and was running down the stairs and heard the shots that ended Alex Preddy's life, right? When she moved out onto the street, the neighborhood was mobilizing, and that included, because ICE had decided they were going to preemptively treat the neighborhood as if it was rioting, that included pushing trash dumpsters right out into the street and garbage cans into the street to try to slow their movement into the neighborhood because they were firing off tear gas canisters, right? Did my friend know everybody who was doing all of those things? No, but it was easy enough for people to look around at what was happening and say, I agree with you, I am also going to do that, right? So that is another way that we need to be prepared.
Sarah, I am aware of the time, and we are not even halfway through
dear.
what we wanted to get through. Sarah and I like to talk.
We do.
With each other. But there's a question that I want to make sure that we get to, and that is, how do we maintain things like trust when things are scary like they are now?
This is a conversation we have in RE sometimes, because interdependence exists whether we want it to or not, right? And like, not everybody that we're in a state of interdependence with is someone that we can trust. And that is very hard. And that can test our faith. Yeah, it can be really, really difficult. And also, as Unitarian Universalists, we know that even when someone turns out to not be trustworthy, it does not mean that their inherent goodness does not exist, right? It means that they are not ready to handle their own ish right now so that they can be in community with us, right? And sometimes that is just the way that it works. But yeah, like building that trust person by person through direct engagement in the things that matter, right? Like that, it has a cumulative impact. And it's something that we need to be doing here. And it's something we need to be taking home.
And we have this belief that people can change, right? And so when people come to us and they say, I didn't believe it until now, or I thought everything would be fine, rather than,
I told you so.
thanks, Sarah. Never mind.
You stink. You're canceled. Go
Right?
home.
Right? So being gracious and understanding that we believe that people have the capacity to change. That I believe it was Maya Angelou who said, "When we know better, we do better." Right? Mm-hmm. What are some final? We've got like 2 pages of notes we still wanted to share, but we're running out of time. So, what are some final things that you would want to leave people with?
No, really, get to know your neighbors. Like really, really, really. Like we're trying to bring back neighborhood groups at UUI, and we've had some interest in bringing back neighborhood groups. So like, it's not as big a lift as it sounds like it is. We know where y'all are. But it would be
not in a spooky way.
Not in a spooky way, but we do. But like, so if you're someone who thinks to yourself, yeah, if there was a neighborhood group in my area, I'd be happy to be the person that jumped on Slack and was like, how about we all meet at the restaurant on this day at this time? Like, you need to let us know, right? Because we really need to get that rolling, because that is the fastest, easiest way for us as a congregation to mobilize across the city.
And if you're interested in working, either being like a coordinator for your neighborhood or being the coordinator of the neighborhood groups, this is something Sarah's going to be spending some of her time on. Mm-hmm. But it can't just be her, right? Like we need help from the community. So please let one of us know that you're interested in working on this.
Yeah. And we're not talking about filling your trunk with like half-face ventilator masks to hand out to everyone in the group, right? Like we're not talking about that. We're talking about building community on a neighborhood group level so that we know where our UUI neighbors are when we need them, you know?
So I'm going to wrap us up with the words I started with, which is that we are all connected. And that connection requires action, not just acknowledgement. The Whispering Town saved lives because neighbors knew each other well enough to trust each other in the dark. And that is what we are being called to build right now. Interdependence is the foundation. Next week, we're going to be talking about what we can build on that foundation. We're going to be talking about justice and how it's different from legal. We're also going to be talking about mercy and how mercy is essential to justice. Mm-hmm. But you can't do justice work without first knowing who you're fighting for, without seeing each other, without being in community. Because, as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. so wisely put it, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all. May it be so. May we make it so together.